Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's about 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we're about to start the show. Welcome to Two Peas in a Podcast. My name is Phil Davis. I'm one half of the Two Peas, and the other half, Paul Mosley, P1, which makes me P2, is not available today. He's enjoying some personal time, and hopefully he'll be able to share some good news when he returns for the next podcast. But going forward for the next hour, I'll be your host, and I hope to talk about something that's very important, I believe, in the Black community, which is how do we find ourselves in 2024 explaining the positions of faith within our community. And I've asked on my Facebook page for believers, priests, ministers, reverends, doctors, bishops, prophets, prophetess, whoever you are, if you're a believer and can come onto the show and explain. I'm not asking you to defend, I'm asking you to explain Christianity to a newborn, someone who hasn't yet formed any opinions. That might be a kindergartner, a first grader, but someone very young. How do you explain Christianity in 2024? So with that in mind, I would invite you to call in at 216-584-5400, and we'll talk about what it is that how you explain Christianity or religion in 2024. But before we get there, I want to make sure that that everyone who has watched the show last week, and we have over 1,000 views, and I feel pretty good about that. That was our first show. I want to say thank you for taking the time to watch the show. But for those of you who missed it, we had two guests. One was Ken Montero. Ken is a friend of mine from Stanford, and he called in to speak about his view as a theist, or as he said, he's might even be considered a deist. And one of the key takeaways that Ken shared with us, I'd like to explore just a little bit further. But before we get there, the second guest was Perry Payne. Perry Payne Perry Payne is a friend of mine. We go way back to Upward Bound in our pre-college days. Perry was at John Adams. I was at South High. And I asked Perry to come and share his journey with the listeners and the viewers on Two Peas in a Podcast. And he also had a theme that I'd like to explore a little bit more. So let's go back to Ken Montero's. Ken had a lot to say about how it is you interpret the Bible as a book. But one of the most fascinating things for me is that he stated that the Bible is merely a compilation of stories that are stapled together. And I found that very interesting because that means that he's admitting that these are just stories, that there is no factual basis for these stories, that this was somehow woven together and presented as a holy scripture, and it has been elevated for many, many years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, as somehow delivering information, knowledge, insight that is more than you can get anywhere else. Therefore, it's been called the Holy Bible. But if we take Ken at his word, and I do, that it is a compilation of stories stapled together, then it calls into question why in 2024 we have such reverence for a book that was written by people who did not quite understand astrology, did not understand science, did not understand basic cycles of the earth. A lot of things that they did not understand, but somehow we overlooked that, and we were to believe that somehow the earth was created in 6 days, and that the Creator, referred to as God, needed a seventh day to rest. And that this is important because this dovetails into Perry Payne's point about facts. And facts matter because facts are what should drive your insight, your thinking, and your conclusions, and should also drive in part your behavior. And there are no facts that support any of the stories of the Bible. And that's important because you could talk about the Garden of Eden. There's no physical evidence of the Garden of Eden. You can talk about the creation of the earth in 6 days. That certainly did not happen. You could talk about a lot of other events, Noah's Ark. That did not happen. Noah did not build an ark that housed two a male and female of every species. One, it'd be physically impossible, but then two, you'd have to give Noah a lot of credit for being this amazing scientist who was able to distinguish the genitalia of snakes and discern between male and female. So you're talking about a book that people quote from all the time, people look to, people point to, people derive their insights, their feelings about their belief systems are grounded in the Bible, when the Bible in and of itself does not hold up. If you want to look at it as literature, that's one thing. But when you want to look at it as somehow some divine insight, or I forget the phrase, but somehow the Bible is never erroneous, is the word of God that is always correct. That does not comport with, as Perry said, the facts. So those are two things that came about from the first discussion on our on the podcast from last week, and I wanted to make sure that these are things that we're going to go back to from time to time, because they really do drive the narrative that if the Bible is in fact a string of stories, a story strung together and stapled together as a compilation and presented as somehow the divine word of God, we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, where is the evidence for that? And why is the Bible so inconsistent? Why it's so full of errors? And these are the things that, as Perry would say, are that don't align with the facts. The facts as we sit here in 2024 do not support a lot of the stories that have been presented in the Bible. And I want people to call in and dispute what I said, if you can. But for right now, we're going to just hold those out as some of the themes that we're going to bounce back and forth to. Another thing that I shared toward the end of last week was the number of churches in America. There are over 385,000 churches in America. And that number for me is astounding. That's a lot. That's 15, 16 churches per 10,000 people. That's a lot. When there are only, you look at it for, let's say, an operation as big as McDonald's, there are only 15 per 100,000 people. So there are 10 times as many McDonald's as there are, 10 times as many churches as there are McDonald's. And that is not to just put out a number and just say, oh, wow, isn't that amazing? No, it's important because let's look at the impact of a religion that is using a book that is not grounded in facts as the basis for their belief system, and somehow managed to put 385,000 of them throughout the United States. What that does is that puts an enormous amount of influence into the hands of a very few people. And that is one of my main contentions about living in a theocracy or near theocracy, which is what I believe America is or becoming quickly, because the policies and the narratives that are presented that are faith-based or driven by their belief in the deity, God, or the Son of God, Jesus. Those things are very have a high degree of influence in the United States, and I have a problem with that because America was founded on freedom from religion, and that it's okay for people to believe in that, but when those beliefs outrank or overly influence the politics of America, and they influence the intrusion of law of the government into people's lives, that should give people pause, and that gives me pause. Someone asked me on my Facebook page, well, why is it that you're so consumed with talking about churches and religion and Christianity in particular? It's because it's inescapable. It's inescapable in American life to not be confronted with the theology of Christianity. Everything from the symbolism of crosses. You see that as fashion. You see that as part of architecture. You see many churches as you drive by, those 385,000 churches with the cross on it. You see billboards, you see signage, you see it's influenced in the media. You have people who feel they have to declare their faith in order to be involved in politics, even though it should be separate. You have it in culture. One of the best examples I can give you is that I listen to secular radio. That's what I do. I'm not into gospel music, although I have occasionally enjoyed a gospel song from here to there, whether it's going back to somebody like Sam Cooke, because of his incredible vocal range and how he was able to master the gospel music genre, just incredible vocal dynamics. Sam Cooke, I would listen to a Sam Cooke song, but the influence of gospel music onto secular radio is a bit much for my taste. And again, the best example is on Sundays. On Sundays, if I want to listen to secular music, that's what I want to listen to. But somehow the programmers at the particular radio stations believe that Black folks would rather listen to gospel music on Sunday, even though there are separate gospel channels, whether that's on Sirius or whether that's on Radio One. It seems that somehow the influence of gospel music, and I'm talking about the influence from Kirk Franklin to Drake, God's Plan, DJ Khaled, people who have come from a variety of walks of life, have their songs played that are on a secular radio station, but are definitely appealing to what people believe is their faith. And it's a free country. America's a free country, but I have problems when this becomes the norm, and it is the norm for religious music to not separate itself from secular music, and it's always just for me. Just if I want to listen to secular music on a radio on a Sunday, that's what I want to listen to. But at a particular time, it's already been ruled that that hour is dedicated, or 2 hours is dedicated to gospel music. Whereas I said, if you want to listen to gospel music, that's fine. Plenty of channels otherwise. But so that's something that I talk about, just the influence of the 385,000 churches. These churches are not some innocuous building. These churches and the people therein have become politicized. They have a lot to say about particular things, including elections and school board representation and what kids should read and what is appropriate for particular behavior and language. And they want to impose their value systems on the rest of us. And I have a problem with that. I really, really do. But let's talk about the impact of those 385,000 churches. That is simply the greatest transfer of wealth in America every Sunday. Not only is 10 o'clock the most segregated hour in America, and this was a quote from, I believe, Dr. King back in the early 1960s. It's still this way in 2024. It is the most segregated hour in America. However, what is not stopped or what has not been prevented is the continuous transfer of wealth from the many to the few. We have been, as Black people, have been, I would say the word conned into believing that it's important to give 10% of your pre-tax earnings to the church, when a lot of people can hardly afford to make ends meet, but yet they feel compelled to address the needs of the church first before they address their own needs. And if you just do the math, you can multiply. If every church did $1,000 a week, you're talking about $4 billion every week going out the door, something like that. It's a pretty high number. But then you multiply that times, and I know their churches do way more than $1,000 a week, but you multiply that times a year, times 20, 30, 40, 50 years. My last calculation is that there have been something close to $3 or $4 trillion in transfer of wealth from the many to the few. And the question that I have for people who tithe, for people who ask for tithes, is where are the results? Why are we asking people to put money into a building that serves its congregation once a week? And don't get me wrong, the church is the Sunday morning social club. I understand that there are other things that people get out of going to church besides the religious aspect of it. But looking at the amount of money that has been transferred from the many to the few, and there are a lot of pastors of mega churches who are doing very, very well, sitting on millions of dollars, traveling around in flying around in private jets, and doing many things that lead and driving the fanciest of fancy cars, of luxury cars. It makes you wonder, where we need to think twice about why we do what we do, and that is the whole focus of why I feel compelled to address these issues, because we need to break the dynamics, break the continuous transfer of wealth. We need to break away from that inherited trauma that goes along with the unquestioned faith. We're bringing along the trauma of our ancestors with the continuation, the perpetuation of the religion used by our masters to use as justification for the enslavement of our ancestors. So that's what I wanted to make sure that we keep in mind as we go forward. The other thing that I wanted to do is talk about the why. And I spoke a little bit about how I was changed on a train ride from Paris to Cali, from Cali to Dover, but in England back when I wore younger man's clothes. But before then, there was a change in my way of thinking, and I credit this to a young woman from Florida A&M. Her name was Geraldine Stokes. So she called herself Jerry. So this is a story about Jerry. When I was my junior year in 1980, I had a summer internship at BP America, And at that time, it was before BP. It was still Standard Oil, but but BP downtown at the headquarters. And Geraldine Stokes was also one of the interns. And we hung out and we went to lunch. And we decided to. It was a beautiful day. We went to Burger King, and I got my Whopper, my standard Whopper, and whatever else I got, and she got her meal. And we went and sat down at the fountain between Key Tower and other places. And as we sat there and unwrapped our sandwiches, I opened up my Whopper and I took the bun off and I reached for a packet of salt and I tore the packet of salt off. And before I could start to spread the salt on it, she said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You're about to put salt on your Whopper without even having tasted it first." I said, "Yeah, but that's all. That's what we do. That's what I do." And she said, "Why don't you try going without the salt and tasting the burger first, before, and then decide if you need to add salt?" And I said, "Okay." And literally, I put the salt down and I took a bite of it. And I was like, "Oh, okay. This is good without the salt." But I realized at that point that I merely was mimicking how I've been raised. We put salt on everything. I did it without thinking. I did it without questioning. I just did it because that's how we did things in our household. Salt was a spice. It wasn't meant to accentuate spice. I mean, you put salt on a lot of different things, and I literally credit Jerry Stokes with saving my life, because at that very point, the point that I gave up that salt, I'm sure whatever borderline, whatever I was approaching in terms of the trajectory of hypertension, was immediately wrecked in a positive way, because I gave up salt cold turkey. And I noticed that over time, my palate changed, and that my palate became more sensitive to salt because I had given up adding it without thought to my meals, and that eventually had implications for how I approached seasonings at the restaurant Fill the Fire. That's another story. But the point is that the one thing that Jerry Stokes asks is, why are you doing this without thinking? Why are you doing this without questioning your own behavior? And that is the thing that has had the most impact on my life in terms of opening up my mind to thinking about things that I've been told were just given. That I was born and raised Catholic. I had no choice in the matter. That's what it was. I was Catholic. I went to church every Sunday until I reached my late teenage years, and by the time I got to Stanford in my junior year, I had stopped going. Period. But my point is that this is a critical time, 2024. Cat Williams called it the reckoning, and he predicted some other stuff. But I'm hoping that 2024 is a year that we as Black people can begin to stop and think and question what it is, what we do, and why we do it, particularly when it comes to health. What we eat, how we eat it, how we prepare it, and the amount of food that we eat. Do we stop and think for a second? Wait a minute. Why am I doing this? And what are the pros and cons of continuing on with this? But more importantly, when it comes to issues of faith, I am an atheist, and being an atheist is not a system. It's not a practice. It's just that it's a declaration that there's not been any credible evidence to support a belief in a deity, whether you call that God, Jehovah, Allah, Jesus, or whatever. That's what all an atheist means, is that I don't see it. I don't get it. There's not enough evidence. I'm driven by the evidence to reach my conclusions. But I'm not asking for anyone listening watching to become an atheist today, all I'm asking is that you take time when you're by yourself, whether you meditate or chill or whatever, just stop and think about why it is that you believe what you believe. Is because this is what you inherited from your parents, your grandparents, from your community, that it was the expectation that you were going to be a Christian, you're going to be a Baptist, you're going to be Catholic, you're going to be a variety of denominations of the Christian belief. But did you at any point apply any critical thinking to the process of understanding what it is and why you believe? And I think it's really important to drive home the point, going back to what Ken Montero said about the Bible being a compilation of books stapled together. A lot of people, when I'm talking about this on Facebook, people will quote the Bible as proof of the existence of God. That is not proof. People will quote the Bible as proof that Jesus existed. That is not proof. That is just one of many stories about the Christian belief, and it's also part of the Abrahamic tradition of writing these stories down and passing them on as, for lack of a better word, gospel. But when you think about the stories and the things that you believe, please, all I'm asking is that you take a step back and ask why. Why is it that you've reached this point in 2024 and you still believe? I'm not asking you not to believe, but you have to ask yourself, why do you believe? And that is really fundamental to the change, because it goes back to, for me, again, it's my story alone, that I credit Jerry Stokes with saving my life, because she forced me to ask the question, why was I putting salt on my food without even thinking about it? And I was doing it out of habit. I was doing it out of ritual. I was doing it because that's what had been taught to me. That is what had been ingrained to me. That is what I'd been accustomed to with my palate, that salt preceded everything else. And that simple change in my behavior changed everything. It was a game changer. And I'm asking for you to do the same when it comes to your faith. You know, to ask the question, are you believing because that was what your grandfather said, your grandmother, your mother, your uncle, your big brother, whatever, whomever is an influencer, or who the community grew up there, everybody was Christian. Is that a reason in 2024 to remain one? I would question that. The other thing that I would like to talk about is my own cancer journey. I was in 2016 diagnosed with prostate cancer, and right now in 2024, I am a survivor of prostate cancer. That doesn't mean that the cancer is gone, but it is being managed in such a way that I'm able to do 99.9% of the things that I want to do. And for that, I must applaud the great people at Siteman Cancer Center for their tremendous work, particularly last March, when my cancer had reached stage 4 and it had become metastatic, and it had spread to my spine and my lymph nodes. And if you don't know anything about cancer, if it spreads to your spine, what it does, it basically takes over your spine if it continues to spread, and it will cause your spine to break, become brittle and break. And at that point, you become immobilized, obviously, and then the rest of your life is in a wheelchair, with death being not too far behind. And I bring that up because it was the brilliant work of Dr. Angela Gia, who was my radiation oncologist, who told me she had this. She said, "Phil, I got this. I think I can get the cancer off of your spine and off of your lymph nodes." That was in March, and then 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, the cancer has not returned. That doesn't mean it can't return, but for right now, all I know is that right now, up until this point, it has not returned. Thanks to the good people at Simon Cancer Center, and that's just a plug for the amazing things that are happening in science, and it has nothing to do with a belief in a deity. Because people say, well, I should be thankful that I was spared and I survived. And I disagree. I'm thankful for the being here in Cleveland and availing myself to the great work at UH Simon Cancer Center. And this is important because somehow we begin to put a lot of emphasis on how we fit into life and what's going on in our life, and somehow, some ways, it seems as if if things are going great, then God gets all the credit, and things are going bad, then God is absolved of any responsibility, and it's up to you to do more, pray more, do whatever it is. That's not the case. I have sat across from the Grim Reaper. I was told in 2016 that I would not live until 2019. So here I am sitting across from the Grim Reaper in a intense staring contest, seeing who was going to blink first. And when 2019 came around, the same year that my daughter graduated, went to prom and do all those things that I wasn't supposed to see, I was like, okay, we're still here at the table. And from 2019 to 2024, the Grim Reaper blinked. I'm still here. And it has nothing to do with other than the fact that I'm very fortunate to have been in the care of those wonderful people at UH. So I have my own journey about surviving and getting through life without reliance on the belief in a deity. And I've turned my back on religion over 40 years ago, so I kind of know a little bit more about this journey. But what I'm here to represent is it's that if you are even thinking about questioning or giving your thoughts, your doubts about religion, about faith, about God, about Jesus, about other religious entities, if you give them more than just a cursory thought, if you spend some time thinking about them, talking about them with friends and absolutely talking, you can find that talking about your doubts about Christianity is a lot like giving up salt. At first, you're like, well, wait a minute, whoa. I used to salt everything. This is a different journey for me. This is a different course for me. But over time, not salting everything becomes the norm, and all of a sudden your palate becomes sensitized. And you start to appreciate different flavors and the nuances. Your palate is like, oh, wait a minute, I detect this. I detect the sugar, the sweet, the salt, the bitters, the umami, all those things that your palate can appreciate. But if it's overly salted, you can't. And I'm just saying that there are a lot of wonderful things that are to be experienced in this life that don't rely on the belief in a deity. And I'll just share this with you that for me, I am a inventor. I'm a futurist. I'm always thinking about what's possible, or what can be done now that isn't being done. That what can be done in the future that isn't being done now. And so I'm always looking at ways to see if there's a better way to solve a problem. I am on this side, and there are a lot of people who swear as theists that somehow, that as an atheist, that I'm not able to share in the wonders of this world, and it's just the opposite. When you remove the belief in a deity, and you totally immerse yourself in the moment, whether it's stargazing or the solar eclipse or whatever it is, you will find that you get very excited about the history of the earth and the fact that there's stardust that is running coursing through our veins, that we are made of stardust. That to me is the most romantic notion ever, that we as humans walk around, that we have stardust coursing through our veins. That gets me excited, and it's a lot more exciting than belief in a deity. So I'm going to hold up for 1 second and give me about 5 seconds, and I'll be right back. Okay. Any calls yet? Okay. All right. Okay. Before we get to the main topic of explaining Christianity or religion to a newborn, I wanted to talk about an experience that I had, and it really helps me to understand how people think about certain things. Um, there is a seductive side of Christianity, and by that I mean that it's easy to be seduced into believing that by believing that great things are going to happen to you. Recently, very thoughtful gentleman suggested that it would be in my best interest to allow God to demonstrate his proof to me. And if I did that, then I would see the power of God, and that things would change dramatically. And I said I would think about it, and I did think about it, and I realized that that is the seduction of Christianity, that somehow God is bestowing favors upon you, the individual, that somehow God is singling you out for blessings, that somehow that your life is the way that it is. If you're balling, if you living your best life, it's because of God. And I thought about what had been presented. I said, wow, that's highly seductive, because if I do give into that thought, then, and let's just say that all of a sudden one of my inventions becomes the hottest thing since sliced bread, then all of a sudden I'm expected to give praise to God. But the reason that I did not accept that offer is because it dawned on me, wow, yeah, that's a possibility, but that still would not address the fact that every day in this world, there are 25,000 people, most of them children, who die of starvation. So there are millions, or excuse me, there are over 1 billion people who subsist and have to make their day for themselves, for their families, on $1 a day. $1, not tens of thousands of dollars, not $100, $1 a day. It's over 1 billion people. So yeah, it would be great if that one of my inventions became the hottest thing in 2024. I was living large, I was balling, and all those things, but that would not bring me satisfaction, because that would not change the trajectory for 25,000 people who are guaranteed to join the 25,000 people who died last night, and the 25,000 people who will die tomorrow of starvation. Meaning simply they don't have enough calories from food to eat in order to live another day. 25 100,000 people around the world. That's a lot of people. And I would not feel better because all of a sudden my life became uh, materialistically better because I somehow gave credence to God for that for one of my inventions catching fire. So there is a seduction that that happens, and I think that that is where the rituals of going to church and tithing and all the things support that seduction because you're feeling that by doing all these things that you're singling yourself out, that it becomes your way of sort of buying your way into heaven. And we could talk about that concept another time. But the whole idea is that there's this dance, there's this seduction that goes along with the belief because you're doing this because you believe that somehow God is going to bestow favors upon you and single you out and make your life better. And I would ask you to think about does that really seem fair to the people who are dying and barely getting by on $1 a day. You know, I'm not saying that life has to be fair, but let's not code it in terms of that somehow God has singled you out at the expense of a billion and a half other people. Just it doesn't sit well with me, and that's what I'm asking you to think about as you attend the Sunday morning social club, also known as church. And the reason I call it Sunday morning social club because there is a very valid social aspect of going to church. People go to church because it gives them a social network. We're human beings. We thrive on that. But I just don't understand. I don't understand, and this is how we'll go into uh, the theme of the show. I don't understand how in 2024 we can continue the rituals, the dogma, the theology of a religion that was used to enslave our ancestors and is currently being used to prop up Donald Trump, who has near a Christian bone in his body, and but somehow he's being held up as a man of God. Let me open this up if people want to call in. I would, with the what I just spent the last 30, 40 minutes talking about as a backdrop, I would like to know if you could explain to me Christianity from your standpoint. I'm not asking you to defend because you don't owe me or anyone else. This is your belief. You believe what you want. But how do you explain Christianity to a newborn? Because for some of the reasons I've just mentioned, but also I can't come up with any rationalization for the belief in this theology, this theism, this monotheism, which is just an evolution from polytheism. And in 2024, why would I expect a child to grasp that there is a being in the sky, looking at everything and sometimes gets involved and sometimes doesn't get involved. And most notably, in America, seems to have no interest in getting involved in school shootings. But according to certain leaders, he's very interested in the activities of people who dress up in drag or somehow they believe that it's important for them to terminate a pregnancy because of the health of the mother or whatever reason. It's not my call, but yet we have built an entire system around this notion that this is the best thing forward. And so I have wrestled with how would I explain uh, uh, Christianity to a newborn, and if beginning with the ancestors of how it was used against them to now, um, there's no through line that for me is acceptable to say, yeah, I want you to in 2024, by the time 2044 rolls around, I want you to be a very active member of this particular theology, of this particular church, of this particular denomination. There's nothing that I can find. And again, other than if people want to continue to use it as a social outlet, social network, I'm one to this is not my way is the right way. I at least I understand that, but everything else I do not understand, and that's where the belief in uh, religion, belief in a God, belief in Christianity, belief in other religions, it just does not add up for me because it does not allow me to explain to a newborn why it is that they should be a part of this as well. I can tell you from a numbers perspective that it's encouraging that the number of young people who consider themselves either atheist or agnostic or just non-denominational is increasing. Those are so non-believers and I would say near believers are increasing, and I think that that's important because we look to other movements in the past. It is always the young people who force the change versus other people who sit in positions of power and authority. And I'm encouraged by that, but I still look at the situation in America as we sit in 2024. We could look at a lot of the things that happen to strangers that we don't know. Obviously, they're not strangers to their families, but the shootings, the violence, uh, it happens. And when you put that in the context of a God that is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, um, but it seems that he has all these superpowers, but is very indifferent about what goes on around the world, particularly in America. I just can't rationalize it, and I'm hoping that someone could come onto the show and speak to that if they feel compelled to do so. So one of the things that I would like to address while I hope that someone calls. Um, and the number is 216-584-5400. Um, it's a situation where the the stakes for this discussion, the stakes for these decisions are pretty high, uh, particularly because of the 385,000 individual churches that, when you add them all together, remain a very powerful force in this country. That if we want a different result, and this is the thrust, this is the crux of my thinking. We if we want a different result, we have to do and think differently. And I know that it's hard. I know that people are quick to dismiss what I might be saying, but if we want a different result, we've got to think differently. And the pervasiveness of religion in America, it's on our currency, it's in the Pledge of Allegiance, it's songs are sung at sports venues. It goes on and on. I mean, everywhere you turn. And again, I'm more sensitive to it because I'm just blown away by the pervasiveness of religion in our everyday lives. I mean, every day, every hour, it's inescapable. But if we want a different result, I'm asking people to think differently, to act differently. And part of that is to consider for a second questioning why you believe in a deity, why you continue to believe in a deity, and if it's worth thinking differently about that.
Hey Phil. Uh-oh, I got a little bit of feedback there. Let me share a little bit of something. I think one of the things that men, women, human beings normally ask the question at some point in their life, why am I here? Why am I here? And with that question alone, it gets you to thinking and wondering, you know, who created me? Who created man? What is my purpose? Why am I living? I mean, where did I come from? And I think that question begins the search. Um, I know that when I was asking that question and I was getting in all kind of trouble and doing all kind of things I had no business doing and finally had to set a time to sit down, I just began to ask, okay, why am I here? And the answer didn't come from, how do I put it? It didn't come from the outside. It didn't come from the outside. It came from the inside because there was something missing in me on the inside of me. And then I began to search and I found and I studied and I looked at different religions. And now that I'm older, I know it's not about religion. It's about your destiny and living your life and understanding that some people call him the creator, but actually in the Hebrew, he brought things into existence. He didn't create, he brought it into existence. You being an inventor, you can take materials that are on this planet and create the mini microwave, right? God, who is above all creation, he brought everything into existence so that men could create things. And he gave us the ability to do anything we want to do on this planet. And that's why when you talked about Christianity, Christianity was actually a a Roman, almost like a Roman cuss word. If you do your history, it was used to put people into slavery. It was to point out those who were different. Those who were Judean. You had your Judean, you had your Palestinians, you had all those people over in the Middle East. They had different names, but the Christian was like a curse thing. It was a terrible thing to be called a Christian. But somehow it became a religion. It became acceptable. Actually, and I'm not going to keep your whole show, but I think you would have to do more research on why are you here. I think that's the thing. And I'm the guy that told you that if you ask God to show himself, then he would obviously show himself, not to allure you to it, but to get an experience with it. And you brought up the point about people starving around the world, and that's absolutely true. But then you said you would use your millions of dollars on yourself. See, that doesn't make sense to me. If your heart is a heart of one to help other people, then if you were given $1 million or billions of dollars, you would more than likely, because I sort of know you would help other people. You would use that to help other people. So when you have a relationship with God, it's not necessarily that he's going to empower you to prosper, to give it to yourself. No, the word says it's better to what? To give than to receive.
But Larry, let's. I'm glad you brought that up, and thank you for revealing the identity of the person who shared that with me. There is a thought amongst believers that there's a question of why am I here, and there is a very simple answer why or how you're here, because your parents procreated, whether they were married, separated, divorced, or whatever. Somehow they got together and formed this embryo that eventually became the person that you are. So there's no mystery. We understand very clearly the how people are born, and we understand how we as humans have we are a species. We're not so unique. We're a species of primate, and we have very close cousins and that share this earth. But my point is that the difference between ourselves and our primate cousins is our ability to think, and that does not have anything to me to do with a deity. You say, why am I here? What it is, what you are given, I believe, is an opportunity to give purpose to your life. You give your life purpose. It is not purpose that is divinely inspired. It is you deciding that your life has purpose and this is what you are going to dedicate your life to, or whatever it is that it might be. But it's because you have used your brain that is more highly developed than any other plant, any other creature on this planet. Man has humans, I should say, humans have the most developed brain, which is why we sit here surrounded by all this wonderful technology. But the purpose of your life comes from within. Is not something that God is going to come from behind a curtain or somehow make appear in a mushroom cloud to say this is your purpose. No, you have to think about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your opportunities, what are the threats to all of those, and what is it that you can do? You give purpose to your life, and that is you don't need to rely on a deity to give purpose to your life. You understand why you're here. You're here to figure out what is your purpose is, and your purpose comes from you discerning, what it is that you can add to this thing we call life in a positive way, and that has nothing to do with it. And let me also make clear that I'm not a baller, but I still take time when I see if I'm in a position to do so. I will gladly hand somebody a 5-spot, or see somebody on the side of the road, or as I gave a young man a ride. He was hitchhiking on 77 on one of the hottest days in the summer. Young black man. I just stopped, said, "Look, what you doing?" I gave him a ride up to Akron, and that. So if I had more money, I would just do more of those things. So the money is just a factor. Would change the factor of how I do that. But the notion of what I want to have people just disavow themselves of is that a deity is necessary for you to find the purpose in your life. It is not. There is no deity that is going to give you purpose. You have to give purpose to your life. You have to take the time to figure out what are your strengths. And I say that from experience because it took me the longest to be able to utter the words, I am an inventor. But that's what I do, whether it's children's deodorant, whether it's the world's smallest microwave, Fill the Fire, the Pushel, and a few other things. That's what I do. Those are my strengths. That is something that I'm really, really, really good at. But that took me a while to figure out. And so I'm saying to anyone who's listening, watching, that the purpose is divined by you, that you give purpose to your life by deciding what it is that you figure you can add to this society in a highly productive way at your A game. And you don't need a deity to do that. And that's why I asked the question, how do you explain Christianity in 2024? If you were to explain to a newborn, what would your hopes and aspirations be for that newborn? It would have nothing, in my humble opinion, nothing to do with a deity. It would all be based on them being happy, being productive, finding their purpose from within, and that has nothing to do with a deity. And that's where I find fault with the perpetuation of Christian theology, Christian dogma, Christian rituals, and things like that. We need to think about a different way forward. I'm asking you to take a moment and think about a new way forward. And with that, I want to say thank you for watching Two Peas in a Pod. P1, Paul Mosley, will be here next week when we come back. I hope you've enjoyed this hour. I know that I've enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you, and we'll go from there. And next week, we hope to share some more journeys with you. Thanks so much. Have a great day.